Okay, today we're going to be making an island chicken, and it has a bunch of ingredients in it, and this is why I'm really big on going to the grocery store and going to the bulk food aisles to get your spices, because recipes like this, you're going to have some foreign spices that you may not be used to. So what I suggest is grabbing just a teaspoon's worth, if that's what the recipe calls for. And don't buy more than that, because you may never use it again. You may find a recipe that you're trying and find out, I don't like this recipe, and then you have a whole bottle of a very expensive spice that you don't need. So in this case, today's recipe calls for a ½ teaspoon of a whole bunch of spices, and the one I was just holding was coriander. Then we need a ½ teaspoon of cayenne pepper, ground cumin, ground ginger, and turmeric. And then we're going to be using a whole jalapeno. Depending on how hot you like it, you can take those seeds out. Some real salt meaning that it does not come from a processed source, that it actually is a mineralized salt. Some fresh ground pepper. We have chopped garlic and onion and cilantro and fresh lime. So we're going to be putting this all together. To start, I've rinsed my chicken thighs over here, and they're waiting. In the bowl, I've put in 3 tablespoons of oil of your choice. This happens to be avocado oil. And I'm going to start with those spices, and I'm just going to be putting in a ½ of the cayenne pepper and a ½ of the cumin, a ½ of the turmeric, a ½ teaspoon of the coriander. There we go. And we're going to mix it all together. So I've added in the majority of the spices. I'm going to add in some salt and some ground black pepper. And that's to your taste. My family loves fresh pepper, so I'm just going to put quite a bit in there. And I'm going to mix that all up in a bowl. And this creates the marinade for the chicken thighs. So now I'm going to add the chicken thighs in. And I have 2 packages of chicken thighs. I never do just one. I have a family of 4, but I am big on making sure that there's more than enough for lunch the next day and possibly the meal another day, because I'm a working mom and I need to make sure I have more than enough food around so that we're not going to fast food places, that we have fresh food available at all times. So I'm going to use my hands and get this all coated in the marinade. Once it's coated, it's going to sit for 30 minutes in all that spice. And remember, when you're working with a recipe, you can change those spices. You can increase them or decrease them. If you feel that the cayenne pepper is more than what you can tolerate, then take it out. Or if you feel that some of the other spices may be less than what you want, increase them. That's the beauty of cooking, is it's all about you and your taste and what you like. So we're going to set the chicken to the side, and then we're going to come over and get the second half started in just a minute. Okay, for the second half of the recipe, we're going to be using a food processor. This is hands down one of my favorite utensils to have in a kitchen. It does everything that you could need, and when you are a busy mom or a dad and you are in a hurry when it comes to cooking, this will do the job for you. And stir fries, cutting, shredding, everything all in one unit. And so this unit happens to be about 20 years old, as well as my KitchenAid mixer. They are in hot and heavy use, but today we're going to be using a food processor. So the second half of the meal, we're going to be adding in 3 cloves of garlic. And then, as you can see, I took the seeds out of the jalapeno because my family is not totally into hot food. They like some spice, but not a ton of spice. And then in here I have 3 tablespoons of fresh lime juice, And then the other, I have lots of favorite kitchen utensils. This is called a microplane. It is a very sharp shredder, very, very sharp, so you have to be very careful. So I'm going to take this half a lime that I haven't used, and I'm going to just put in some fresh lime zest and shave that right over the top of it. Of course, be careful. Watch your fingers because it is sharp. I've had this microplane for probably 6, 7, onwards up towards 8 years, and it's still very, very sharp. So we have the zest of some lime in there, and I'm going to throw in a bunch of cilantro. And I didn't have fresh tomato on hand. If you have fresh tomatoes, especially at this time of year, go ahead and cut up 3 tomatoes, 3 large tomatoes. In this case, I'm going to use 1 can of diced tomatoes and put that in. The lid goes on. And that part of the recipe is done. The next section is we're going to move to frying the chicken, just browning it, and then we're going to get it ready for the crock pot. Okay, now we're on our third step for our island chicken dish, and here I have a stainless steel pan that is on high with oil in the bottom of it, and it's getting nice and hot. I've diced up 1 whole onion and 3 garlic cloves. Waiting on the side is some ginger. I don't have fresh ginger, so I'm going to be using some powdered ginger, 1/2 cup of whole chicken stock, organic chicken stock, and then to the side here I have some coconut milk, 1 cup's worth of coconut milk. I'm going to fry or brown, I should say, the chicken thighs until they're just browned on both sides. After that, I'm going to be removing the chicken thighs from the pan and putting them into my crock pot, and then I'm going to be cooking up the remainder of this except for the coconut milk. The coconut milk will be the last thing added. It's added at the very end just before serving. So I'm going to get started on the chicken thighs and browning those, not cooking them all the way through, and then we'll get into the rest of the recipe from there and finish it off. Alright, so the chicken's been browned and that's going into the crock pot. And our next step is I'm going to add a little bit more oil to the pan. It is very hot right now. And I'm going to add that whole onion and those 3 chopped up garlic cloves, and we're going to get that going, and this takes just a minute. This will cook very, very quickly. If you could smell this, you would be amazed at the smell. The one thing I want to really emphasize, this is a spicy dish, so I need you to really read the ingredients and look at how much spice do I want in this, because you can really control it. If you want mild, then don't put in the cayenne pepper and don't put in the jalapeno. If you want spicier, you can always put in more spice. But if you do not prefer a spicy dish, you can pull it down. This dish has such amazing flavor to it that you don't want to skip out on too much of it. But the heat, you definitely can. Okay, those onions are done. All I'm going to do is take a 1/2 teaspoon of the ginger. This is where you would be putting in the fresh ginger if you had that. And then this is going to go in on top of the chicken. And then the final stage is to take the blend that we made in the food processor and pour it over the top, that tomato blend. I'm just going to get all that goodness out, and I'm just going to mix it all over the top and cover it. And I'll put a lid on it. This is our church night, so I'm putting it on for 3.5 hours. So I would not cook on high. I would not cook this longer than 3.5 to 4 hours. Otherwise, you may end up with a bit of a rubber chicken unless you want to take it down to low and cook it for about 6. Now, if you don't want to cook this in a crock pot, the alternative is once we had cooked the onions, then you would return the chicken back to the pan, pour the red sauce over it, and put it on a medium-low heat and let it cook for about 30 minutes until it's finished. You would remove the lid from the pan and then stir in your coconut milk and serve. But in this case, I'm going to do the long ways because we're going to be leaving in a bit. So I'm going to let that cook until we come back from church and then finish it off from there. All right, so we're down to the end. We just got back from church and it's time to add the coconut milk because we are hungry. So I've turned the crock pot off. If you were cooking this on the stove, you would have put this in just before serving as well. I'm just stirring the coconut milk around. It's 1 cup of coconut and getting it nice and intermingled with the rest of it. And what I've done is made some quinoa, a nice creamy quinoa. You can also use lentils. For those of you on the Clean Eating Challenge, you get quinoa or lentils. But anybody else, you can choose what you would like to serve this over or just as is. So it is ready to go. It has a total of 9 chicken thighs in it, and I'm just going to scoop it out. And this is ready to serve. And you can also serve this as is or with a side salad or vegetables as well. It's up to you how you would like to serve this beautiful, yummy, very healthy dish. But I thank you for joining me with this. It is a pleasure working with you and teaching you on how to cook all natural.